Okay, we're at 8:30. Have a start on this. As I sort of said in the preamble on the Facebook group and everything, it is now 50 years since the Scale World Championships began. Unfortunately, this year's has had to be postponed, but it also it's given us an opportunity to actually showcase it a little bit more, show what you're going to expect to see in Norway. Chris Allen was at Cranfield in 1970 for the World Champs, as was Andy Bowman. The winner there was Mick Charles from the UK with his Jurka Sirocco, and I'm delighted that Dave, his son, has joined tonight. This is the first time that Dave has been on one of the Zoom calls, but is working hard on a model for F4C at the moment. It won't be ready for Norway next year, but for our UK World Championship bid in 2024 or 2025, then I have every confidence that Dave will be there. But welcome, Dave, tonight. You'll hopefully see a couple of photos and give an extra insight to what Chris is saying about Cranfield. Everyone is muted at the moment. What we're going to do is we're going to run Chris's part from 1970, as ever, with my glamorous assistant Roger pushing all the buttons. He'll be playing the video, and then we'll open up for sort of like 10 minutes or so of questions, Chris.
Something like that.
Yeah, about 1970. We'll then go across to Pål Anthonisen in Norway, who's on holiday, hence we're doing outside broadcast tonight as well. He's going to show you around the championship venue for Tonsberg next year. And then we'll open up for questions both about what to expect at a World Champs and specifics about Norway. When it comes to the questions, either raise your hand in the normal way through the reactions, or you can type a message in chat as well if you don't have audio, and then I will hand over to you for the questions or ask them on your behalf. But over to Chris.
Okay, for those that don't know me, can't be that many. I've been playing with model aeroplanes ever since I was allowed to hold a razor blade by my dear mother when I was a little kid, like probably most of you guys. And my first real exposure, although I spent a lot of time with the late great Eric Coates at my local club down at Leon Solent for many years. He was our club chairman, and I got very much involved and interested in scale to the point where my other interest, which was aviation history, helped a lot in convincing Eric that I was suitable material to become a scale judge. And it was after the World Champs in 1970 that Dennis Stumpson, who I got to know very well, invited me to join as a judge at the UK Nationals. And I think the first year I did judging at the UK Nationals was 77, I think, something like that. But anyway, I was thrown in at the deep end to a bit with the likes of Roy Yates and all sorts of people. But essentially what I propose to do is Roger has kindly copied my brochure, or the important bits of my brochure of the event at Cranfield. For those that don't know, it's the home of the university, which is about halfway between Milton Keynes and Bedford. Still an operational airfield. And if we the BBC made a film of the 1970 World Champs, and I'd like to run that first. It's a black and white film. I think it was one of their local news organisations that did it, but it'll be suitable for an introduction, I think. And then I'll after that I will I'll go through a few photographs I took at the time, and one or two I'll make some observations about the way things happen, because we've gone a long way since 1970, and as Nav will testify, the way we judge scale models has dramatically changed. So I mean, it's like a lot of these things, it tends to change anyway, but it's only when you look back to 50 years you think, my goodness, there's an awful lot of water gone under the bridge since then. So let's, Roger, are you with me? Can we run the film clip, please?
Before the battle for the air, 6 judges examined every detail on the planes to see just how good they were as replicas of the original. They weighed them, measured them, and checked their paintwork. Were the hinges the right size? Were there the right number of rivets? For the World Championships, even the tiniest detail had to be right to within a millimetre. The points each modeller scored for accuracy and scale were to be multiplied by the points he got for flying. So a good start in the static modelling could mean literally a flying start in the aerobatic contest. To the untrained eye, Maxi Hester's Ryan Special looked a world beater. Even the judges seemed impressed.
The tread is an accurate representation, isn't it? Well, for scale accuracy, what would you suggest? About 8.5 to 9.
But after detailed examination, they were eventually able to find enough faults to mark it down.
If you feel 8's too much, do give a less mark. Who done
Craftsmanship is good. Exactitude, no good.
I shall give 8.
Yes, it would be fair.
Could Britain's aero modeller Supreme catch him? Mick Charles Sirocco once scored 10 out of 10 for scale in a previous competition. Its undercarriage actually retract with a lever in the cockpit. And Mick made those tires himself. He made a mould and built up layers of wafer-thin letters to get the name on them right, before finally casting them in rubber. It took an hour's detailed examination before the Czech judge thought he found a fault in the plane. Mick Charles and the British team manager were sent for to explain.
You have it. Mick will explain.
Can you tell us, he thought that this also should have one on the top as well as on the bottom.
It's an alternative, not
F-coil, bad and cable, understaffed and contact.
So
The Czech judge still wasn't satisfied. He reckoned Mick Charles got a detail wrong.
each aircraft is different.
Mark me that it hasn't got it, right? And I'll go and bring you a picture without it there.
You should have brought more pictures anyway.
No, you need 3.
In the scale trials which we held to choose the team for this World Championship event, this model was in fact given 100% scale accuracy marks. But now we have been able to fault it very slightly. For example, the cowling here should show a very slight gap between the cowl line and the fuselage. This is perhaps a little too smooth. It should be raised up slightly.
It sounds as if it should be a fault on the plane, which isn't there. This is too good.
The model there is slightly too perfect, quite so. These are
he's suffering for it, isn't he?
He is indeed, yes, but only to a very small degree, I would point out.
By next morning, the contestants knew exactly what the judges thought of their entries. Britain and America shared the first 6 places, with Mick Charles leading Maxi Hester by nearly 100 points. So it was all on the flying, and considering it was the World Championship, there was some pretty awful flying too. Mind you, many of the pilots had hardly ever flown their precious models before, because they didn't want to risk smashing years of painstaking work. With gusting winds, the men were soon sorted from the buoys. Even the American star, Maxie Hester, came close to disaster, but he was to get another chance later. Mick Charles, ahead on the modelling inspection, set a cracking pace with some great flying. Britain swept the board. Mick Charles took the individual world title, and Britain took the team prize, in spite of a near miss on the last runway.
Right. Can you all hear me? These are just a few shots I took of some of the models. And what we're looking at here is Maxie Hester's 1/5 scale Ryan ST Special. All the models, of course, were built to the 5 kilos weight limit, so they're consequently a lot smaller than what we're used to now. And they were all powered by 2-stroke engines. There weren't any 4-strokes or reliable 4-strokes that were readily available in those days. So you ended up with somewhat less than perfect throttle responses from a lot of them. But and you don't get a smooth progression of power, of course, when you open the throttle on the 2-stroke. So you've got problems. The other thing that I didn't really notice until I saw that film again was the number of airplanes that were flying without a pilot, including this one. But right, how do we move on, Roger? Thank you. This Bulldog, I couldn't find anywhere on the list of entries. I do know that quite a few of the guys that turned up brought reserve models, which makes you wonder quite why, and you might ask the same question until you think, well, a lot of these models hadn't actually flown until the day of the contest, which is something that really doesn't happen these days. So I haven't got any details on that. I haven't got any details on who made it. All I know is it was a nice looking model, but I never saw it fly. Okay, next one. A D8. Again, this again is another reserve airplane. Didn't see it fly. Indeed, it may not have flown at all. Right, next one, Roger. Okay, this was a control line model. The French team were there in some strength. This DH-89A, Jacques Mateur, as you can see, 1/10 scale. I got a feeling that the weight limit was the same for control line. If anybody knows differently, perhaps they could let me know. Next one, Roger, please. Walt Muscher's Fly Baby. This was one of the biggest models there. This was a 1/4 scale. And from memory, it flew quite well. I mean, it's a typical low thick wing model, which should be fairly stable. And there's been an awful lot of models of this particular aeroplane built in this country and elsewhere. So there's a biplane version of it as well, isn't there? Okay, Roger. Bill Harney's Focke-Wulf 190. This is a control line model again, I think. Yes, it is. 1/8 scale. So a lot of these models are quite small. There was, I haven't got a picture of it, but there was a 1/10 scale Mustang, which these days would be considered to be just simply not competitive on size, but there you go. Okay, next. A French Jodel D140. I got the impression that I think we'll look when we come to some pages from the brochure, it'll jog my memory. but I got a feeling this was the only French entry that was radio. All the rest were control line. One of the most interesting aspects of this, which made people think, oh, typically French, was the rather glamorous pilot. Next one, Roger. Bill Lumley. Now, he's the guy that built this full-size aeroplane in the States and used to fly it. It was a much modified Chipmunk, as you can see, much bigger fin and rudder, different tail, much more powerful engine. This model was built by Harold Wallace in the US team. I believe his claim to fame was he had one of the biggest engine collections in the States. I don't know, but there were quite a few of the scale models that had sort of appendages like silencers hanging outside. Now, of course, these days it's considered to be something you just don't do. But anyway, nice model for all that. I can't remember the scale that was built to, but as you can tell by the size of the feet alongside it, it's not that big. Next one, Roger. Terry Melanie's Miles Hawk Speed 6, built to a scale of 9 to 48, which is roughly what? A fifth. One of the British team, nice model. I've seen it fly quite a lot, and it flies very well. Again, I haven't been able to establish exactly what engines these guys use, but they were all 10cc two-stroke glow engines. Okay, Rog. I think that's a double. Go again. Yeah, here we go. Yeah. Boeing P-26 Herbert Raeger from the German Federal Republic, to be absolutely politically correct. East Germany as we know it now. Nice model. Unfortunately, again, I got a feeling that you saw this fly very briefly in the video clip. I don't think this model had ever flown until that first flight, where it promptly rolled in and broke the nose off, which is what happened to quite a few, I remember. Again, Rog. Cessna Skynight, American team 1/8 control line model. Again, you can clearly see the lead outs under the port wingtip. Quite a good sized model, I would think, for a control line model. Beautifully finished, some of these models were. I can't recall being able to establish exactly how accurate they were. I did make a few notes on my brochure about the scale marks that they achieved. I tried to get hold of a copy of the actual results, the complete breakdown of results, without success. I'm sure they're there somewhere. Anyway, again, Roger, please. Now we're on to the winner, of course, Sirocco, and Mick puts it down as 5 to 24, a scale, which is what? Roughly a fifth, isn't it? But I remember it outshone all the others, literally. And I'm not just saying that because Dave's listening in. The finish on this is extraordinary. And I thought, well, justifiably on looks alone, it's a winner. I don't ever remember seeing it with a pilot in it, though. But there you go. A lot of models didn't have pilots in those days. I think I got another picture of this, Roger. Yeah, there we go. There's the man. Beautiful airplane. You could see facing it which I'm sure you could, the original full size, but it sort of inspired my enthusiasm to think about how these models are judged. Next page. A swordfish. Now, you saw this crash in the first part of that film clip. Joss Deman's swordfish, 1/8 scale. Good bit smaller than yours, Richard. I don't remember seeing it fly again. I was there for 2 days. It was a 3-day event. Next picture. There we go. There's the brochure. 6 shillings, which is what? Somebody help me.
30 pence in 30 UK pence. Money.
Yes, it would have been 30 pence these days. Yeah, there you go. Next page, Roger, please. There you go. That's the. I'm not going to go through all the pages because most of the pages in this brochure are adverts, which you know, not that interesting unless you're into old radio kit. There we are. There were just 2 classes, control line and radio, and there were 5 judges in each class who did the static and the flying.
And I noticed there, sorry interrupting Chris, but yeah. one of the judges from the US was Claude McCullough, and I believe, was he not involved with the design of and like the setting up of SIG manufacturing? Is that not right, Richard Krapp? If you
he might be the same McCullough. I don't know.
Yeah. He's the one that designed your Waco, is it not, Richard?
Richard's...
Oh, yeah, Richard's on mute at the moment, but yeah, he can say it then, but I'm sure that's the same Claude McCullough.
Right, back to the slides, please, Roger. Where we go? Roger's got a pained look on his face. You lost it?
Chris, there are no more pictures. It's only the program now.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want to show the centerfold where it had the list of all the entries.
Okay, stand by.
Right. Next page. There we go. That's it. Whoa. There we go. Now, as you can see, there were in fact teams from 8 countries. And in radio, there were 5 teams and 3 singletons. And in control line, there were just 5 teams of 3. You might just vaguely make out some of my pencil scribblings. I didn't see all of the judging. I didn't see all of the flying because the way it was run was somewhat different from today. It was a 3-day event, as I said, and they started in the morning with demonstration flights, which were all sorts. But they weren't just scale models, there were other models there. And then they had an hour or so of RC flying, and then they had some more demos. And then they ran through the control line, followed by more demos, and then the rest of the RC, and then more demos, and they did that each day. So the format of the event was considerably different to what we do now. as we've already discussed before, some of you joined, the maximum weight limit is 5 kilos. And you can, if you look along the top, you can see that there was a mark for scale accuracy, and then a mark for workmanship, and then you got flight 1, flight 2, and then the scale factor, and that was determined by the scale accuracy, which was and that was a multiplier for the workmanship. So you then got corrected flight points and then the total score. So when I said we've moved on a long way since then, yeah, we certainly have. It's somewhat more logical now. But that gives you a list of the models and the teams and the names. A lot of these people are obviously sadly passed on now, but it's a pity in a way we couldn't get in touch with some of them. I don't know whether there's any scope to do that. But,
well, one thing that I'm currently working on, I hadn't actually realised that it was 50 years since the World Championships began, and we are currently, well, I'm saying we, I'm leading something where we are going to put together a sort of like a montage or a video, which will include photos like what Chris has shown today, video footage, and some interviews with past world champions to celebrate the 50 years of the Scale World Championships. That won't come out until probably the end of this year, beginning of next year. But I have managed to track down some people, thanks to, well, Stan Alexander, who's just joined from the US. We've tracked down a couple of the US guys that were there back in 1972 and 74. Heinz Simon from Germany, who was the second world champion with his Messerschmitt Comet. I've still got contact with him and his son. So yeah, we're definitely going to do something which sort of like celebrates this 50th anniversary. But I'm taking away from Chris, so we'll open up now to questions. Chris?
Yes, I think so. Anybody got any questions?
Anyone got any questions? Andy Sefton's come up with the equivalent that basically the brochure in today's money would be about £10, which I'm sure people would complain about if they were paying £10 for the brochure. So interesting.
It was also the entry fee to the event.
What the entry fee was?
That was it. When you paid your entry fee, you got a brochure. So admission was by programme.
Yeah, not the entry fee for the flyers. I was thinking
No,
cheap.
just spectators. No.
It's a little bit more now, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, sure is. Any questions? Anybody? Can't see any.
Oh, yeah, Bert van Eyck from Holland. Bert, do you want to unmute yourself, or Roger can do it for you?
Yes, I am. I wonder how much time it took in the first, with the measuring of the models, how much time it took in the static.
Yeah, can you imagine static judging like that, Bert? I mean, I've been chief judge at the World Champs several times, and I'm glad I wasn't around in 1970, because that would have been an awful task to do.
But to start with, the competitor, as part of his documentation, had to produce a scale rule, which took away the need for the judges to basically make lots of calculations when they measured the model, which of course you don't do now. But they used to pick the model up, and you saw it in the film clip. They'd get a tape measure and they'd measure, and then they'd compare with the scale rule to see exactly what it should be. And from memory, I can recall some models taking 2 hours or more. And there was an awful lot of debate between the judges and you saw Dennis Thompson, who was the I don't know whether he was the chief judge. I don't think they even had a chief judge in those days, but I got the impressions some of the judges were not that experienced. I don't.
And at that time, the judges have a night shift.
Yeah, I don't know, but there was certainly an awful lot of debate and a lot of argument going on between the judges. I seem to sort of, I stood in the background and listened to a lot of it, and I thought, well, this is, I mean, to me, I was a little bit disturbed by it, to be frank, because I thought this shouldn't be like this, and I was glad to see the end of the original judging criteria and the need for a scale rule, and the fact that there were people who were handling the model who really shouldn't have been doing it. I don't actually remember seeing any damage being caused to the models, but it's a bit of a worry. And of course now, the only handling that happens now is with free flight models and indoor models, which of course you're much less likely to do damage to. But when you're trying to swing these things around to measure with a ruler or a tape measure, horrendous. I thought, no, this is not right. So yeah.
Andy, you have a question or a comment about stability?
Yeah, it's looking at that film and a similar film I saw a few weeks ago. I mean, it really sums up everything that's bad about scale modelling, doesn't it? If you want to be put off scale modelling, have a look at that. Yeah. I'm surprised that anybody did it beyond the 70s with publicity like that going around. But for me, most of the aircraft looked to be unstable. CG was far too far back, and I think that was one of the limitations of the 5 kg weight limit. In that when people have put all the detail on the airplane, they come to the flight bit, check the CG, and find out they've already hit the 5 kgs, so they can't put any nose weight on.
Yep.
Whereas when you get to the bigger models, then one would hope that you'd have a little bit spare. But all of them could have done with a half a ton of weight on the nose. When you look at them, they're departing in pitch with minor inputs of elevation.
I'm sure you're right.
It was just an observation. It's not a,
And the fact that so many of them had never flown before the competition, that was the bit that.
Yeah. Well, the two go together, don't they? Because if your model's unstable, you don't want to fly it in case it is unstable. But it's not going to gain anything on the day of the competition, is it? So anyway, there you go. I'll shut up now.
There we go. Stan Alexander, do you want to unmute and ask your question? Or can you unmute? So basically, Stan from Tennessee is asking what radio systems were used. Have you got any information on that, Chris?
Well, back in those days, it was Doug's. It was Springbrook.
Well, perhaps Dave Charles, do you want to, if you unmute yourself, Dave, or Roger unmutes you, you can talk about what your dad used.
Yeah, that sort of information is difficult to get hold of.
There we go, Dave.
I know what Dad was using. I don't know about everyone else. He was flying Skyleader.
He was Skyleader, yeah.
Yeah.
And you still actually have
27 megahertz, of course.
Oh yeah, 27.
But you've still got the Sirocco as well, don't you?
I have it in the loft, but unfortunately, it doesn't look anything like as nice as in these pictures.
Yeah, but 50 years on, then you can imagine.
Yeah, sure. It's a shame, but it's been bashed around a bit. Yeah.
That's it. Did he fly it much more after the event?
No, not that I remember. He basically flew it at the competitions after that.
Yeah.
He built a bigger scale one many years later for a 50cc Cavan twin, which he entered It was Woodvale. He built it for Woodvale.
I remember seeing a bigger one. Didn't know
Sold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bill Grimsley, you've got a question?
Yeah, I was wondering just how different the models in 1970 were against the models we see today. With the likes of today, we've got the use of computers and 3D printing and stuff like that.
What we might do, what we might do with that question, Bill, is we might leave that to the end after we've gone through Norway. So remind me if we don't go back to it.
Sure.
Because we can then sort of like compare. Steve Kessel is asking, was all the judging done up close, or did the judges also look at the models from a distance? I'm not sure on that.
Not that I recall, Steve. That was one of the observations I made, that nobody seemed to step back and say, well, you know, if you hold a photograph of the model up and you're 5, 6, however, more than 2 meters away from the model, a lot of the outline errors you can see, they stick out. They're quite easy to spot, as you well know. And I can't recall that the judges ever did that sort of step back and look from a distance. Every time they went to judge a model, they clustered round it and they got the tape measures out.
Yeah. So as long as it measured correctly, they were happy.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more interesting.
I even
with me wearing my judge's hat, how you were able to judge properly.
Seeing one guy, and I can't remember who it was, but he had a load of plywood profiles of the fuselage, and they were cut out so that you could check this. And I didn't really see the point of that, because he obviously made them to fit the model, and he provided them as part of the judging criteria, so the judge could pick the profile up and hold it against the fuselage. Yeah, the shape's right. You know, well, that to me is complete nonsense. And I thought, well, but then they had drawings as well, of course, lots of drawings. In fact, I seem to remember there were more drawings than photographs in those days.
Do you fancy judging like that, George, in Norway next year? No, I'm just getting a shake of the head. We're all in agreement. John Carpenter, you've got a question.
Yeah, during Chris's spiel, he mentioned this is a reserve model, and I thought, what's all this about reserve models? I've never heard of that.
Well, exactly. We don't do it now.
Yes, but I've been around a long time.
You certainly don't take the reserve model to the competition and put it on the table. I couldn't find out where those models, who they were, who they belonged to even.
Did you have a reserve pilot to go with it?
It looked to me as though the rules allowed you to have a second model.
Oh, I see.
But I don't know how it worked, and I don't know how they got round the judging aspect, because once you've statically judged the model, you had to go and fly it.
I think part of it as well is, like, sometimes, as ever, when you make your entry to the World Championships, you're intending going with a specific aircraft, and then something happens. Whether it isn't finished in time, it hasn't been through the full testing. Every country has different qualification criteria to get on the team. And so you end up being there with a different model, but the actual brochure and everything said Graham Kennedy Ironka C3, but I ended up turning up with my old aircraft. So yeah, I think there's an element of that as well.
Put it this way, and I'll close with this comment, and then we'll go to Norway. It was sufficient to put me off static judging for the next 10 to 15 years, because from that day onwards, when I was invited to judge at the Nationals, I said, yeah, I'm quite happy to judge, but I'll do flight, not static. Thank you very much. And I'll leave it there.
Good point. Adrian, we'll come back to your question at the end, but essentially the manoeuvres were exactly the same back then.
There were more
and what was
compulsory manoeuvres.
Yeah, you used to have straight flight, procedure turn, and figure of eight as the compulsories.
Yes, we did. We didn't have the descending circle in those days.
Yeah, that didn't come in until mid-90s, Narv.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. But anyway, we'll go across to Narv, Paul, and the campsite in Norway.
Yeah, I turned off the camera because it's I've been kicked in and out and in and out and in and out because of the net here is not that good.
Okay.
So hopefully I can see the video and comment on the video. If I'm kicked out, I'm sure that Nar can also comment what is what on the video. But now it's worked for 4 or 5 minutes, so hopefully it will work.
Okay, Roger, can you play Paul's video?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see a little bit. First of all, it's this year it should be about 87 pre-entries, so it's quite good. We had about 48 in F4H, and I think it was 39 in F4C, so it was quite good pre-entry for a World Championship. Why I'm recording this, you see on the video right now, is because this is the entry to our airfield. It's actually my home airfield where I fly usually. So when you enter the airport, it looks like this. I will stop now at the club house, if you can call it that. And when I'm stopped the car, we will go outside where we will have the hangars where we have the storage for the models. There is our clubhouse coming into picture with one hangar. And we have a couple of other hangars at the sides. Those will be used for storage of models. We also have one more hangar a little more to the left that we also may use. And when you stand by the hangar, this is the view. So it's a small airfield, both for full size. We use it for model aircraft. We use it for parachuters, parajumping, I meant. And also what you call it, microlight. What we are doing now, it's taking the car down to the actual place we're gonna fly. But when we have entered this little one, when you see the grass at the right side of the car, that will be the camping area for the competitors and whoever wants to camp at the site. We have to have some sort of arrangement taking the models out for the flight area, but that will be fixed. So all the green at the right will be the camping facilities, and we will also use that big hangar you see coming up now. That would also be used maybe for storage if it's full at the others. What we are doing now is I'm actually driving down to where we have our model airfield. It's in the end here somewhere, and we will at that site. Now we are on the main strip. This is the site for the F4C. I am close to the bottom. We will slightly go a little upwards that way, but this is the view you will have when you fly. On the other side of the tarmac, it's also about 10 meters of grass, so it's you can also use the grass if you want to. It's quite flat. Many have asked if it's mountain in Norway, but right here it's quite flat, so it's not a problem. We probably cut down that tree you see also, so it's okay. The runway is about 50 meters. What you see now is actually the other way, and that's the part where we're gonna fly F4H. We will come to that part a little later on. This is our model airfield where we're gonna fly F4H. it's about 300 meters of tarmac and about 550 meters of grass. So it's quite good. And up in the end, you also see the hangar. So it's quite a distance, but we will travel that by four-wheel drive with some hangar on and stuff. So it will work fine. And as you see, it's quite flat. And it's also wide enough to make a little adjustment for the wind. Usually it blows straight down the runway from the south, but it can turn a little here and there, but it's room for getting into the wind. Now we are just driving up again, so you can see the distance, because all the tents and caravans and parkings and so on will be up in that end we come to now. So most people are expecting mountains, but there are not many mountains at our airfield, so it's quite open, quite flat, and give a lot of space. It's space for everything. The only issue we have is this distance, but that will be sorted out. And now we're going out the main entrance again, and I think that will be the end of the tour at the field that I want to show all the guys who actually are gonna participate, because then they know what to expect. So unfortunately the problem, I tried to turn on the camera again, see if it works. Of course, Corona, we tried to postpone for next year because it's a lot of expenses traveling from the other side of the world to a World Championships. But it's also good for us who is trying to run the championship, because then I could make all our deals reversible, so we can use them next year instead of paying this year. If I waited furthermore out, it will be trouble. But as it seems, it's impossible to run the championships at the time anyway. So I think it was a good choice. Any questions as we go?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a good choice. I mean, at the moment, I would have been staying in a hotel in Denmark, ready to get the ferry tomorrow morning across to Larvik, and I think John Carpenter and Richard would have already arrived. It's amazing how quickly the times come around. Just a quick comment in regards of the orientation of the runways. I believe sort of F4C and F4H, they're essentially flying back to back. That's
back
right,
to back,
isn't it?
Yeah, and it's probably I don't know, but it will end up about 250, maybe 300 meters apart in the middle. And we need that because if I get a slightly wind change, then we have to have some security measurement to go, so you can land into the wind and take off into the wind, of course. We will run into trouble if it's totally crosswind. That's seldom. It's very seldom in July. 95% of the time it's probably straight down the runway from the south. So hopefully it will be. The only problem we have is the sun, because the guys who fly in the F4C will have the sun in the face in the morning. The guys who fly F4H will have the sun in the face in the afternoon. So
can I put in my request now for when the UK comes? I'm noticing Gwen Avenel there from New Zealand smiling on the crosswind comment as well. So when you flew the Fury and at Top Gun, the crosswind ended up the most awkward for you.
Yeah, but usually I think it's not often we have straight crosswind. Yeah. That's I don't think that will happen, but it can be 10 degrees, 15 degrees off, and then we just turn, because the both the tarmac and the grass is wide enough to to have a slightly movement. So I don't think that will be a problem, actually. Hopefully, it will not be a problem. But I think it will be good. The grass on the F4C strip is not quite as good as it is on the model airfield, but it's going better. So actually, it's good that we have one more year. It will be better next year. So,
Gwen, do you have a question there?
Yeah, I do. Just on that, with the sun, I think it would be not a silly idea to start thinking about those sun. I can't remember what they call them, but there are discs that a lot of the F3A flyers use. I've flown with them a couple of times, and they actually work really well.
We have.
I don't know if you've got them, but we've considered taking them if that's the case.
Yeah. We have them at the airfield, so it's actually, if somebody wants to use them, it's okay. Another thing I've been thinking about is actually, because since we have 2 runways, depending on the weather forecasts, we probably have a lot of time. So it can be a possibility, if we have a good weather forecast, that we maybe skip the F4C in the early mornings and wait until about 11, because then the sun is gone. It's not a problem anymore. And vice versa with the F4H. Just don't fly late in the afternoon.
And do you have like a time restriction at the airfield? So,
no.
Because I mean, my experiences in Elverum when I was there in 2009, I was flying my little indoor models after 11 p.m. in the evening with still fantastic visibility.
We don't have any restrictions at all at our airfield. We have, but it's not. It's more an internal one than when we have this championship. The airfield will be closed down for all traffic. It's just the World Championships going on, so we actually do what we want. So it's quite easy that way. We will close the airfield. I think it's Wednesday morning. Because next year we start in the 17th of July. That's a Saturday. Wednesday we will close down the airfield, so we have the practice and all that stuff going on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Also a little on Saturday, and it will be closed until the Sunday after the banquet. So it's nothing going on at the airfield at all, except for the World Championship. So we are free to do whatever we want.
Excellent. Any questions from the German team there? Martin, Hans-Dieter, Andreas? I see Martin stepping forward. There we go.
Yes, I'm fine. I've got no question. Do you understand me? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Yep, totally.
Okay, I'm fine. No question at the moment. Thanks. But I'm not speaking for the whole team. So Andreas and Monica or Hans-Dieter, I don't know what they are saying. So I give the word on to my teammates. And I forgot, I'm not in the team. My son is in the team, Tom,
yes,
but he's a little bit afraid to join because of his English, and I couldn't convince him to take part. So I'm sorry for that, but that's the way he is. He's now 13 and a half years old, and it's a little bit difficult at the moment.
But it's excellent. I mean, the German team actually have 2 juniors.
Yeah, it's a great thing. I think it was 7 or 8 juniors entering in the pre-entry for 2020. So yes. It's if everybody's coming next year, I mean, it's great. We have if it's 7 or 8 juniors coming to a World Championships, that would be fantastic.
And Greg from Australia, you've got a junior and our first female competitor coming to World Championships as well, if she manages to recover from her broken arm.
You have to stop riding horses.
Yes, Mel has to stop riding the horses and then she'll be okay.
I've got a comment. If your F4H entry stays at that level, which we hope it does, at 48 entries or whatever it was, they are long days in the field. I don't know whether you'll have the luxury of actually finishing early in the afternoon. Have you looked at the actual time and you know, like a program run time with all the entries in it?
Yeah, I have looked at it, and if we have 50 entries, it will be okay to do normal days, as we say. Then if we run from about 9 o'clock to about 5 o'clock, with of course a break in the middle, it will probably be okay within the limit of days. We can go further on if we see it's going slow, but if the progress and the weather is good, the weather is the problem always. But if the weather is good and we can fly all the time, and we can push through quite quickly, like we did in Meiringen when you was the chief judge, I think we can manage to stay, probably be one day left if we do normal days. I think the plan is, I have done some calculation, but I think if we run starting to fly on Monday, and we will very quickly see if we need to maybe do the days 1 hour or 2 hours more. But I have a calculation. I think it would be okay as long as we don't. I think the problem is if we get 60 or something, 60, 65, then we have a problem. Then we have to do longer days. But of course, then again, we have to take a look at how to do breaks for the judges so they don't get tired. I thought I will discuss that with you in the spring when we actually see how many entrants we have, and we can talk about how to make it. Maybe it's better to do long days with 2 breaks, or yeah, I think we have to take a look at that when we see the actually entrance number, but I don't think it will be any more. It's probably 3 or 4 guys in F4C that was missing, and also the Japanese team in F4H, and I think that's the only participants we actually missed on the pre-entry this year.
Sorry, I'm saying, speak of the devil. I'm not sure if you heard me talking about you, David Law, just before you joined, but I mentioned you and Mel there. So thanks for joining.
No problem.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good night.
How's the recovery going from your horse accident?
Yeah, okay, slowly. We'll get there.
She's got about 3 weeks before she's allowed to drive again.
And then flying?
Well, we can't fly at the moment anyway, so we're
I know, that's true.
So we're okay. I could fly off a tray. That's probably about it at the moment.
Yeah, but you're going to ride.
Couldn't be any worse. Broken arm. We're in lockdown. Our fields are flooded. The weather's terrible. Might as well take up another hobby.
Question from John Minshall for you, Paul.
Yeah.
It's asking about whether there's any sort of open international events going to be held alongside F4C and F4H. So either helicopter, which is F4K, or F4G, otherwise known as large scale.
Yeah. No, what we actually thought about was, first of all, the helicopter, but our problem there is just that we haven't got the rules through yet, so we need some new rules. They are coming up next year if everything goes as it should be. And another thing we have a problem with was I tried to get some interest from the helicopter guys. There was a few of them, but then again, I have a problem because I don't have the space to run it. I also thought about actually F4B because there is a certain interest for F4B, but then again, I don't have the space. do it. F4G was the same thing, and like Gwen said, when we are talking about 87 participants, then I have what we call time trouble. So I actually, for doing the whole event inside 1 week, as long as I can't do them at the same time, then I have problems. That's why we concentrate on just F4H and F4C, because I can do them in parallel, and even with one bad day or 2 days bad, we hopefully get them through. But if I should have G and helicopter inside the same event, I will have trouble with time. So no, it's just F4H and F4C going.
It's a question related to that. I'll come back to Marcus Hausman's question in a second, but I think, is it John Carpenter asking what are the typical weather conditions in July, August in Norway? From my experience in 2009, it felt very like Scotland.
If you see behind me right now, it's now it's 10:30 in Norway, and it's blue sky, about 18-19 degrees. Today it was 23 where I am now. Sunny, yeah, quite good. But that's it's chilly in the afternoon, so it's especially for us who like a lot of heat.
I mean, my memory of it was absolutely incredible, like how light it was until late in the evening. And when you had like the sunset, I'm sure Richard Kratt will remember as well, when we were all camping in the airfield in Elverum.
Yeah, it's going down
it was
behind
superb.
me now, I think. And it's so it's quite late in the evening now. It's 10:30, so it's still quite nice.
So this is a more general question, but moving on to Marcus Hausmann from Germany, the current F4H World Champion. Welcome to your first BMFA Scale Zoom session. Do you want to ask your question to Paul? If you unmute yourself, it's Galaxy S9, Roger. There we go, Marcus.
Hello, everybody. My question is, what is the plans for the upcoming years for 2022, the championship? Is there already a location found for the championship in 2022?
No, actually not. What will happen is we have, when the plenary meeting was cancelled in April, we had 2 bids for the 22 championship. That's before the corona, of course. And that was the Czech Republic and Romania at the same site that we had in 2016. Then the corona came and we had to cancel the plenary meeting. So actually, we had to have some CIAM meetings on Zoom, where a lot of decision was made. The Czech Republic withdraw their bid because of the virus. That has something to do with financial stuff. So I'm right now, and I haven't yet get it confirmed. It's just Romania bidding on 22, but there is a but. We're gonna have a discussion inside the subcommittee when we come into August about what to do in the future, because there is many ways we can go. We can, if the bid from Romania is still there, we can go with that bid. I don't know yet because I haven't got any answer from Romania yet. The next thing is to move on and alter the odd and even years. So we maybe go for 23 instead. That gives us a little more time. It also gives the competitors 2 years between a championship. The third thing we can do is to forget 22 and move on to 24. But there has not been any decisions on it. We have to discuss it in the subcommittee first to get a Finnish meaning about what to do forward. And then we have to deal with the CIAM and the plenary meeting. And right now there haven't been a plenary meeting in 2020, so actually I can't tell you right now. Hopefully it will be sorted out, I think maybe around December, how it will end up. If we stay with this like it is, or maybe we move to odd year, I don't know. But I think December is the first time I can answer what we will do in 22, 23, and so on. The only thing I know is for sure is that the Czech Republic is interested in holding a championship, but they need time. And UK also want a championship and will bid on a championship. So we have a lot of places right now that is interested in having a championship. That's a good thing. But we have to sort out if it will be in 22 or in 23. I really don't know right now.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Kessel, do you want to say a little bit just about the UK and what we are doing currently? Steve's leading this project and we've managed to forward it quite significantly thanks to Steve's efforts. With me speaking with you regularly.
That's right. Yes, well, we're looking at the financial side of it, trying to make that work basically, and raising the funds that we need to do it. And from our point of view, I think it would be good if we ran this in 2024. That would give us the time to get everything in place to hold a championship then. Any earlier, I think, would be a problem for us. If it ended up in 2023, I don't think we'd be able to make that. But 2024 looks promising. We've had some encouraging news this week, but I can't really say much more here about that.
No, but we're definitely gaining momentum. It's 1978 was the last time that the World Champs were held in the UK.
A long time
the year after I was born. So yeah, it's about time it came back. But Andy Sefton is very much behind it and prodding us at the right times, and giving lots of support. It will. Our bid is based around the BMFA National Centre at Buckminster. I will be doing like a short video from there at a future competition so that all of you guys that are interested can see a little bit more about the facility. But it's excellent. Any questions either about Norway going back to 1970? There was a question that I missed out earlier.
Bill Grimsley.
Yeah, Bill Grimsley. So yeah, about rating the models in 1970 compared to today's models. Bill, do you want to sort of like?
I was just wondering, you know, with the use of computers now and 3D printing, how that affects the build of the model rule, considering in actual fact that a lot of the detail is actually done by 3D printing. How would you judge it anyway?
George, am I going to drop you in it for this one, or? I mean, you're an expert in 3D printing as well. I can certainly give my input. Is George still online? Let's
yes,
have a look.
but he's still unmute. He just speaks.
There we go.
Thanks, Roger, for reminding. I cannot exactly answer that from the judge's point of view. I could answer it from a competitor's point of view. Funny enough, difficult to see, impossible to see. This is a dummy engine. Yeah. I don't know how well it can be seen. Should I enlarge or whatever? Can you see it in the camera?
Yeah.
Video? Okay, this is completely 3D printed. It's 1/20th scale. It is for my kind of models. Free flight people know it, for an Ebru monoplane of 1912. And the question is, what exactly one has done for it? I made the CAD drawings myself using a suitable software. I had it printed outside because I didn't have a machine like that. And then I did all the finishing and the assembly and the painting and the final detailing, which also requires some craftsmanship. It is not something I bought that someone else designed. It has raised some issues in our small free flight society as a method. And I imagine it is the same with the bigger radio controlled models. In my view, if you have done something about it and not just purchased a finished item like a plastic kit or something like that, you should get some markings for it. The printing process is the same as having, for example, a printer printing markings or printing patterns or whatever and using them with the computer aided design system to be more accurate than in the past with, I don't know, a paintbrush or whatever. It's a new technology. Some can use it, some don't have the knowledge to use the 3D CAD systems. It depends on how much time you have invested in the process. And I mean, by CAD designing the same, I researched this engine. There was, of course, a description of the engine in the recent bulletin by John Minsell about the steps. It is an old engine anyway. It's about 10 years old now. I researched this original engine at the Science Museum in London. I had to go there three times, to take pictures and measurements. I spent a lot of time drawing it in CAD. It was impossible for me to do it otherwise with any of our methods. I cannot say it should be downgraded, and I would never arrive at the same result with manual work. It's a matter of decision of the competitor and of how the judging group would consider it. And since there are no guidelines in any category, I think. Yes, Chris?
From my point of view, and looking at this purely from a judging point of view, I don't see it any different from what you currently have to declare about preformed fuselage components or molds or engine cowlings or anything else that you don't actually produce. You certainly finish it, and you might have to do a certain amount of assembly to it. But to me, it all comes under the same category. You're buying molded components, and the molded components are made by a 3D printer. Now, the only difference, and that difference still applies to molded components, if you produce the mold and you have actually done all the work to get the molded component, if you've done all the work to get the 3D printed item, then you should be rewarded for it.
I mean, if I can just jump in quickly, George. I mean, I'm a retired chief static judge at the World Champs. I may still judge occasionally internationally, but not at the World Champs. This was an issue that came up big time during my period at the helm. Something that I started to do was almost to have a discussion with the competitor when it came to craftsmanship. So you got involved in a conversation, you asked them about how they did various aspects, and you could tell by the enthusiasm and the way they were able to interact whether they had done something themselves or whether they had just bought it. And that was my way that I was then rewarding. So if you had done all the work yourself, fine. I had no problem with it. And that was the route I was going down. I mean, Dave, George, do you want to have something? And then it might actually go to Dave Tilbury as well, who's an expert in this. I'm seeing him smiling. George, if you want to say something, and then we'll go to Dave, as he's going to lead a future Zoom session on 3D printing.
I would like to somehow, not exactly reply, but complement what Chris said. There is no mold involved with this process. And the question might be the same for an experienced machinist. You have somebody who can use a lathe or a milling machine manually, and you have someone who has a CNC milling machine. Of course, this is way over our normal modeling tools, but there might be someone who either has access or who even owns one, a lightweight unit. You make a part or a mold, you cut it on the CNC machine. Where is the craftsmanship in that? That's the same parallelism. Yeah. There are now digital machines that enable a lot of things to be done that were impossible in the past, let's say 20, 30 years ago. And I say again, how do you set the limit of what you did and what you bought? True, I bought the service of the machine provider. If I had a 3D printing machine myself of that quality, which is not easy to get, would it then mean that it is my own product? Again, the machine did most of the hard work, the actual printing, but that is part of the process. I don't have an answer really. I might also say it was not a choice, it was a necessity, because it is an air-cooled engine with the cooling fins of 0.2 millimeters, spaced 0.3 millimeters apart, not even circular. It's like an 8 if you look at the cylinder cross-section. So I had to choose to do it that way, my choice. Anyway, that's for me.
Dave, do you want, so Dave Tilbury from the UK is going to lead a session on September the 16th. Do you want to have a little comment and almost like an introduction to what you're going to cover on September the 16th?
Yeah, I mean, but basically I still look at 3D printing as another tool. It's another way of making something that sometimes is very difficult to make by hand. But as George was saying, it's to have the skills to create things in 3D using 3D packages, softwares, and that isn't an easy thing. And I was lucky that I worked as a designer in London for 30 years. I never used computers at school, and it was something that I sort of learned as a sort of means to get somewhere. And I was doing bathroom fixtures. So if you imagine basins and baths, they're very sculptural items, and to create sculptural items in 3D is actually harder than what I call sort of the nuts and bolts, which is mainly sort of parts that we create for model aircraft. You know, we can sculpt the outside of a model aircraft by hand using conventional methods, but sometimes the finer details, you're limited to what you can do. But I can use my Formlabs printer to print at 25 microns. So I'm printing text down to 0.25 of a mil. And if you try and create that by hand, it's impossible. So the computer can give you something that hand modeling can't. But to use both together, I think you're in a sort of stronger position to sort of create more detailed models. But then again, it's the same old problem. It's having the item in the beginning, the drawing, or some reference material to use as a sort of basis to create the 3D model. But it's taken me sort of 20 years maybe of using CAD in London in a designer environment to give me that sort of skill. And it's not something that you can obtain within sort of 6 months of sort of sitting down in front of the computer and trying to learn 3D CAD.
Thanks for that, Dave. Just wish good night to Mr. Sefton, who's getting up early to go and fly a C-130 again in the morning. So thanks for joining, Andy, and see you again soon.
Cheers, Andy.
One last comment.
Yeah, go for it, George, and then Doug, do you want to make your comment after George?
Can get more complicated as well. For example, Chris said, you make your own mold, you make your own parts. Okay, and what do I use as a master? A 3D printed part to make the mold. So again, the question would be, what have I done or what haven't I done? Because there are ways to bypass any kind of objection. My main issue is, did I do most of the work? Did I make the drawing, the design, and also the general work on the subject? And don't forget, we're talking about some details on a world-class model. It cannot make all that difference compared to flying and all the rest of the finishing. We're talking about detailing.
Yeah.
That might make a small difference, but not that much.
Yeah.
No, I think, I mean, Doug, do you want to make your comment, but it basically backs up?
Yeah. So, I mean, from my point of view as a judge, it's simply down to whether or not the modeler has drawn on the expertise of another individual to create the component that he's using. Now, if, as in George's case, he's done the CAD drawings, he's done all of the measurements, done the CAD drawings, he's simply given an electronic file to a man who's pressed a button on a machine that's produced the parts that George wanted, then to me, George has put all of the effort in that he needs to do to be credited with a good proportion, if not all of the marks that are available. What we have to rely on, unfortunately, is the declaration sheets and whether or not people have been truthful in their filling out of those sheets. And this is where your comment comes in, Graham, where you're saying that your conversations with the individuals gives you an insight into whether or not they have actually produced those parts or not. That's the grey area. But to me, if a competitor is believable and he says he's done all of the preparatory work, then he should get the credit for it. That would be my judging approach.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, David probably remembers my experiences in 2014 where I can't remember the exact wording that I used, but I mean, the declaration is only as good as the integrity of the person that wrote it.
Yeah.
That I think that was basically the wording that I said. But it's an interesting discussion tonight. Paul and I have decided that we're going to do a more detailed sort of like open forum, maybe in October time, where you can have input on the future direction of the scale contest rules. Have, well, maybe like discussion on where you feel it should go. That would be at all levels. Well, FEI level, but across all the classes. So perhaps we can keep most of the discussion around that to a later date, and then also after we've seen Dave Tilbury's talk on September the 16th, where we learn a little bit more about 3D printing and other aspects. So have we got any more questions about Norway? Yep. Agree, George. George is saying the same applies to the laser cutting as well. But any more questions about Norway 2021 or referencing back to Cranfield and Chris's piece?
If I can just ask, with Norway, mention was made of the grass part of the airfield. Is that going to give a choice of cut tarmac or grass?
Is Paul still on? It may not be. Narv, you're still on. Under my understanding, then yeah, we would have the option of taking off in on the grass or the tarmac. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember talking to Pål about that some months back, and yeah, he confirmed that you could have the choice of using the grass or the tarmac.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for tonight. Thanks again to Roger for hosting, to Chris and Paul for their thorough presentations. In 2 weeks' time, August the 5th, I think that's right, as I reference my calendar. Yeah, August the 5th. It'll be over to Dougal McIntyre. Dougal, do you want to say a little bit about your presentation in 2 weeks' time, if you want to unmute yourself, or Roger can unmute?
You know, that unmutes it, does it?
Yep, that's you, Dougal. You have the floor.
I'm all set to tell you about the history of the flight over Everest in 1933. Unfortunately, not from a modeller's point of view, because my modelling experience didn't occur at that point in time, and I've never tried to make a model of a Westland Wallace either. I tried one or two other models, and I'll show you a few of those in an introduction. But the rest of it's a straightforward PowerPoint presentation, which runs through for the better part of 45 minutes and takes you from the beginning of my father's career in his squadron and finishes up with his final work with Scottish Aviation. And we'll see how that goes. There's some new stuff in there which I haven't produced before, and that'll be an experiment. I hope that works all right. I've used Google Earth to give me some simulations of how the flight over Everest might go or might have gone, and you might find that interesting. So I look forward to giving you a very deep insight into how they managed to get over Everest in '33. So I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Excellent.
Thank you, Dougal. I think a lot of us are really looking forward to it. I mean, I've seen little snippets of video and photos, and have Dougal's book on his father, and it's a fascinating story, and provides another dimension to what we're doing in these Zoom sessions. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining. UK guys, good news today. We have had permission to reevaluate our international team for Norway in 2021. It has all been confirmed. So we were only sending an F4H team. We're now, provided people qualify, we will be sending an F4C and F4H team. The details of that will come out in an email. I haven't spoken with John Minshall yet, but John Minshall, I'm going to be asking you to send out the email to the mailing list. All the remaining contests are now up in the contest calendar. We've got 6 events planned from mid-August through to the middle of October at a variety of sites, north and south, and what is termed the middle of the country at Buckminster, but it's a long way from me at the northwest, but excellent facility. There is also the option for those guys that are interested, we can camp on site at Buckminster from Monday the 24th of August. I'll be there from the 24th and there on the 25th ahead of the competition in the 26th, which means we can have some informal practice and everything, and just sort of general flying and what have you as well. But that's UK guys. I will be taking videos of the site. That is the World Championships, or our World Championship bid site. So I know Gwyn Avenel's wanting more pictures of the site, so that'll appease Gwyn. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining.